Hey guys, I'm Scott Schneider. This is Stereo Niche. And this week I've got a really cool but rather large speaker from Thiel. It's the CS7. Stick around. All right, so let's talk about the Thiel, either way I think you might be okay, CS7. So the CS7 was manufactured around 96 to 99, and this preceded the CS7.2. And I mention that because there's just a ton of information out there about the 7.2, not as much about the 7. And I don't really know why, because it was manufactured for 3 years, and it was the top of the line, but I just couldn't find much information about them out there. Don't know if the 7.2 just sold that many more units, and therefore there was just a lot more conversation about it. Don't know, but what a speaker it is. It's a very cool speaker. In that period of time, Thiel had the 7 top of the line, the 6, then there was a 3, I think it's a 3.5. They had some dots after, and I can't remember all those, a 2.5 maybe, and then a 1.1. So there were several models, this being, the top of the line. I'm sure they didn't sell very many of them, especially at $89, $100. Not an inexpensive speaker back then, nor today. So a lot of money for it, and I'm sure that's part of the reason why there's not a whole lot of them out there. But so the line, and I'm pretty, I guess it went all the way to the base model. I'm not really sure, but I do know it went at least to the 7 and the 6, all the way maybe down to the 3. But the front baffle is made of concrete, and it's a cast concrete that gives it this thing feels like it's made entirely of concrete. It's 201 pounds according to the information I have. I believe it. It takes my dolly, it takes a good strong dolly to move these around, and they're awkward because they have a slant to them. There's no easy way just to grab them, so you have to be careful. One thing about being concrete, and so that was a change. The concrete baffle existed on this model line, and then as I understand it, the 7.2 went away from that. Because I think part of the issue here, and so I bought these from the original owner. The original owner bought them, put them in his house, and they didn't move from there, which is important because concrete can crack. And so I understand that was kind of an issue, and that's why they went away from it. The benefit, I guess, of it is obviously there's nothing to resonate here. They absolutely feel completely solid, even though they're not. There's obviously chambers here, but feels like one big solid unit. And it's pretty impressive. So let me take off the grill cover here, and then we'll take a look under. If you've not seen these before, the grill cover comes off a little differently than most. First, you have to pull it from the bottom. There's some inserts there. You pull it straight out. Then you lift up, as there's 2 inserts here that go down into some holes here on the top. So let me get that going and show you what they look like. Here they are. So this is it. Obviously, they, to me anyway, look very cool without the grills on. This they look very contemporary still after 20-something years. Love this front, angled, sloping front. It was for time alignment, but still the design looks futuristic. It reminds me in a way of Ridley Scott, kind of Aliens a bit, and some of those design aesthetic that they had in some of the movies. But quite cool, and probably lots of people would be tempted to leave them that way. I don't like dust on my drivers, so I probably will keep the grills on, but take them off every once in a while and let them sing without the grill covers. But very, very cool. So this is a coating. You probably thought it was going to look like concrete. but no, it doesn't. There's a coating over it, or a, you know, a cover, if you will, but that form fits over the concrete. But very solid. It's you know, I'm still amazed at how they've combined all these materials. Jim Thiel was quite the engineer. Concrete underneath, encased in a, you know, a cover, incorporated it into this cabinet, and then covered in this case, a nice teak veneer, and, you know, just very well executed. Now these are a four-way design, is what they, you know, they're called. Looks like a four-way design, but this is a passive. This is a 12-inch woofer. This is a 6.5-inch woofer, and this is a tweeter mid-range coax. So two speakers here. So that's what makes it a four-way. And this is not the model down. The 6 was a three-way, and I didn't check, you know, the other models, so I don't know about those. But every piece of this, every inch of this, everything is very well put together, very well engineered to spec, and you know, just very nice. You're certainly getting something, you know, or got something for that amount of money. The binding posts underneath, there's only one set of binding posts. You cannot biamp these. Apparently, you know, Jim Thiel was a bit of purist in a way. He trusted his own designs and didn't want anyone to mess them up or screw it up. So he felt like you just need one good amp to drive his good speakers. So that's the way he did it. They are, the binding posts are on the bottom. They do have a frame foot around them, and then access in the back there to, once you hook them up. Now that's kind of a pain, because the only really way to get to them is to lay them down. And again, they are heavy. So, you know, if you are doing this, you know, the first time, you probably, you know, need some help, and, you know, getting them securely laid down and attached and then stood back up. So not an easy speaker to move around, I will tell you. This is, it's just some work, I'll say. I'll just be nice about it. It's work because it's extremely heavy, but they're just, the awkwardness, you know, they're not rectangular, and you just want to be careful with them, and, you know, don't damage them in any way, because, you know, they're a very nice high-end speaker. All right, so we'll go through, I'll show you what they actually look like up close. You'll get to see how cool they are, and then I'll come back and then tell you guys what I think about how they sound. right, well, let's jump into it here. So let's start off with some basics here. So this is the Thiel CS7. It was manufactured from around 1996 to 1999. Was sold for an MSRP of $8,900. It is a 4-ohm speaker. It has an 86 decibel sensitivity. I think that may have changed a little bit. I think it went 86, 87. But in any case, not a highly sensitive speaker nonetheless. And it is a 4-way. That's 12-inch woofer, 6.5-inch woofer, and a coaxial 3-inch mid-range coax and with 1-inch metal dome. So that's pretty much the basics. All right, so let's see. How did they compare? So before I get to that, I did say in a prior video, I was asking for some feedback if I should move on from my baseline Advent comparisons speaker and compare them to my current highest point speaker, which is a Pioneer TZ9. And I kept thinking about it, and I decided to continue, at least currently, with comparing them to the Advents, to continue my baseline that way, keep everything consistent as far as ratings. And then what I'm going to do is sort of have a shootout, if you will, of the big guns down the road, this being one of them, of course, and the Pioneers, the IMFs, which I think you can still see over here. And I've got some other kind of higher end speakers that I'll be bringing out. So I thought I'd do it that way in case you are wondering and saw the prior video where I mentioned that. So let's get into it. So let's see. So on style, this was pretty tough because part of the style points incorporates ease of moving them around and putting them into position. That is the opposite of what these are. So on the one hand, they just reek coolness here. They have the slant cabinets. They've got this cool, front design, and they just look the part of a high-end speaker. So they have all that going for it. On the other hand, they are extremely heavy and crazy hard to move around. So, you just can't put them anywhere. That's going to be an issue. But despite all that, I still gave them more points than the Advent. So I gave them a 15 for the cool factor. You've got these in a room, and I think they just instantly your cool score for yourself goes up a couple points because these just have that coolness factor to them, and it will lend itself to you as well as the owner. So for that reason, they get a 15. So on to imaging. So imaging was, and I wrote lively, very full imaging. This is a speaker that, and it might be the first speaker I sort of talk about this way. So for one, the imaging is fantastic. So let me get that out of the way. The thing that I found cool about these is the way, so in other speakers, the imaging is sort of between the speakers. What I found cool about these is that the imaging is also in the speaker. And what I mean by that is that the sound starts at the speaker, the imaging starts at the speaker and then goes to the other speaker. And that's kind of unusual. Most of the time, if the other speaker's over here, of course, the imaging starts around here and goes between the speakers. But with these, I found that the imaging started with the edge of the actual speaker. So it's almost like the speaker itself was an instrument, and some of the music information was coming, as if this was, a bass, being played, or a guitar. It was just sort of part of the soundstage, and that I found really unique and unlike sort of other speakers that I've listened to. And it caught me off guard at first. I was sort of like, that's kind of interesting. Most of the time, the imaging is sort of centered, and the speakers are outside somewhere. And these were, right, involved into the presentation, if you will. And so that was different. It was very good. And I went back and forth. I was almost going to give them an 18, but I ended up giving them a 17. And, I mean, I could argue it either way, but I ended up going with a 17. Whereas the Advents, they get a 13 because, Advents are, very narrow. So that's what kicked us off on the imaging side. On the low side, it was not as overpowering, or not, I wouldn't say overpowering, or as dominating as I was sort of expecting. With this amount of heaviness, I was sort of expecting it to just vibrate the whole room. But I didn't get that. I got what I actually like, which is extremely controlled bass, no boominess whatsoever, and that sort of deep, deep space, sort of like humming of those movies tracks where you feel like the whole ship is, you can hear this low hum of the entire ship vibrating. What I was sort of getting from these. They go deep, but it's not a boominess, it's not an overwhelming, it's just there, and it's in a commanding way. And that's kind of what I like. I don't like that portiness where it's over exaggerated, if you will. I do prefer this type. But even with that, I'm kind of wondering if I should have given them another point here too. But I ended up giving them a 16. I'm almost wondering I probably should have given them a 17. So I'm kind of doubting myself right now. But that's what I gave them, so I'll stick with that for now. When I go back and do the ultimate shootout, I'll reevaluate everything. So they got a 16. On to the mids. It's kind of deceiving. Everything's coming from here pretty much, but everything is well blended. That's one thing I didn't comment on. There's just a seamlessness to the entire package here. And I wrote smooth, subtle, and just well balanced. The singer, and that was one thing I didn't really mention in the imaging, but the instrumentation and singers, everything is in its own place, and it just seemed very natural, and as well as voicing, and so it just works very well. I was extremely excited when good singers came on. It was just extremely satisfying. And so all of it worked together very, very well. And I ended up giving them a 17. I like the mid-range, which I talk about in the Advent, but so I gave them a 17. It gets another point for that. On the high end, I kind of talked about this similarly when I was rating the ADS speakers not long ago, but it was almost like you didn't know there was a tweeter there. It just sort of happens, and everything has its highs without this sort of artificial harshness. And it was just extremely smooth. And it's in a way that there's no sort of any tones or frequency that sort of hits your ear that sort of gives you a little bit of a buzz. None of that happens at all. It's just pleasant throughout. And that's, to me, that's the ultimate way of designing the high end of any speakers. If you can accomplish that without the listener feeling like there was sort of a compromise in the design, that you used a material that was, just hit those highs too easily and were harsh. I think it personally, and I'm not an engineer, but it does seem like it takes more design effort to put in the high end where it's not irritating. And I think that Jim Thiel did that here very, very well. And the execution of it was awesome. So I gave them a 17 for that as well. Again, when I go and put all of the high-end speakers up against each other and have, a big dog shootout, if you will, we'll see if any of these scores can increase on any of them. When you're comparing them to one speaker and you're just, going that back and forth, I'll be able to separate things, I think, more finely when I do that. But anyway, in any case, up against the Advent anyway, it gets a 17. In total score, one thing, but in total, the package here, it's just one of those it's one of those situations where and when you hear the two going back and forth, it's just obvious that there's just a whole lot more going on here, in a seamless sort of way than what's coming from the Advent. So that it's an impression that you get when you're flipping back and forth. There's just that feeling of riding in a high-end car versus an economy car. I'll tell you that. It's just you're just hearing that sort of smoothness, reduction of road noise, all of that stuff that you get from a luxury car. You get that with this, and that's how I would sort of compare it to something else. But in total score, ended up getting an 82. Which is pretty high. Can't remember off. I think that's a little lower than the Pioneers, but again, I'm anxious to sort of put them all head to head and see how they come out. But that's what they did. Extremely impressive speaker. I'm excited and thrilled to have them. I think they rank right up there with some of the best, and they have this cool factor about them as well that I just can't stop raving about, obviously. So that's it. Let me know if, I doubt there's that many out there. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of conversation about the CS7. But if you've got CS7.2s, let me know. I would love to hear everyone's feedback on their Thiel speakers. I know it's a pretty big fan base. Lots of folks who have them rave about them. I think it's a pretty good group of folks who are big Thiel fans. So anyway, love to hear your thoughts. That's it for this week. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you want to make sure you don't miss the next video, hit subscribe.